I have permission. Okay, I'm recording. Oh my gosh, my laundry's ready. Oh, it's just silence that. Okay. All right. Well, welcome guys. Welcome guys to the 11th meeting of Carroll PMC. Today, we're talking about a very important topic, which is wellness as a pre-medical student. But really, this is going to hopefully give you tips for all throughout your life and all throughout your career, whatever career you pursue, especially in medicine in the multiple stages that it's composed of. And so today's agenda is as follows. We'll begin with our usual opening messages. We're going to have a brief forward before we get into our wonderful guest speaker, who's going to speak more about wellness and how it's implemented at a medical school. And then we're going to speak to our own de-stress tips as club officials. We'll then have an open forum where you guys can ask any questions you'd like, which is actually going to consist of the questions portion of this as well. And then we'll speak about our next and final meeting, and then just have a closing message. Oh yeah, right there.
Okay, perfect. Hi, everyone. I'm sharing President Zwijak's screen for this evening. So the purpose of this meeting is, as Andrew stated, to learn more about how we can address mental health and wellness as a pre-med. And we're really here to excite, empower, and involve each and every one of you guys. If we walk away from this, we will all be able to have ways to address our own wellness as a pre-med. And we're empowering each and every one of you guys to apply these techniques for mindfulness experiences that we share or techniques in your own lives. And we involve each and every one of you guys to ask questions if you have them. So for the, is it the next slide? Okay, perfect. For the COVID-19 community update, there's been an increase in total cases compared to the recent weeks, jumping from 30,051 to 35,222 in Montana. The county numbers, Lewis and Clark County, increased by 98 from last week. Total deaths increased by 73 in the state of Montana, with one being reported from Lewis and Clark County. And then additionally, important information, officers' applications. We want to let you guys know that the deadline is upcoming, and that's November 12th, which is this next Thursday. So, and with that, I will allow President Zwijak to continue on with the brief forward.
Thank you, Michael. Okay. All right. So today we're talking about wellness as a pre-medical student. And it's a quite important topic, not only for this stage of your life, but also for building your foundational abilities to handle stress as you continue through the multiple steps it takes to become a physician or a physician's assistant. And I'd like to share this brief statement prior to beginning. It's actually a letter. So I'm just going to read the letter at first. So it goes as follows. Dear Mama and Daddy, I know you may not understand why I didn't seek help. I don't know if I can really explain why, but this choice makes sense to me. I know I had a seemingly bright future, and I know I would have been such a successful doctor and wife and mother. But all I have ever desperately wished for is to not feel like not existing would be preferable to being who I am and living the life I live. I love you both so much. Your daughter, Caitlin. So Caitlin Elkins was a medical student at Wake Forest School of Medicine who killed herself on April 11th, 2013, weeks before beginning her clinical rotations. Her mother, Rhonda, wrote the book By Bright Shining Star and became a tireless advocate for mental health awareness. This book is quite gut-wrenching, but an unfiltered take on the effects of suicide. And on August 29th, 2014, her mother took her own life. Depression amongst pre-meds, medical students, residents, and medical professionals in general is more deeply rooted than we'd care to admit. It's an estimated 300 to 400 physicians die annually from suicide, and as many as 21.1% of medical students suffer from depression. Wellness and mental health are often sacrificed to those who pursue a medical career. Oftentimes it is the primary motivation one has to enter medicine in general is a negative childhood experience or the loss of a loved one. Qualities that lead to success can also lead to tragic consequences. Fortunately, medical schools nationwide are taking notice and have been making efforts to address this crisis. And today, we are honored to hear from a mental health and wellness counselor at a medical school about how these initiatives will aid us in our journey to pursue medicine. So please welcome Karen Robinson.
Thank you so much, Andrew. It's really a pleasure and an honor to be with you all tonight. So thank you for the invitation. Like Andrew mentioned, my name is Karen Robinson. I'm a licensed professional counselor in the state of Colorado, and I work for Rocky Vista University, which has an osteopathic medicine, a school of medicine. We also have programs for physician's assistants, and also a master's program in biological sciences that has a track program to get into the COM. So today I'd like to talk to you a little bit about wellness and also answer maybe any questions you might have, and talk to you a little bit about what Rocky Vista is doing to support student wellness, and also emphasize that many other schools of medicine are doing similar things. So first I'd like to just address, what is wellness? There are many different definitions for wellness, but some of the most commonly used definitions are this one from the National Wellness Institute, which defines wellness as an active process through which people become aware of and make choices toward a more successful existence. Additionally, the WHO defines wellness as a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, and not merely the absence of disease or infirmity. When I look at these definitions, a couple of things stand out to me. In the first one, it's that wellness is a process. So wellness has no finish line. We don't get a diploma of wellness and then we're done with wellness and don't have to worry about our wellness anymore. It's something that's ever evolving and something that we get to choose in each moment. In the second definition, one thing that stands out to me is that wellness is more than the absence of disease. So to be wholly well, that means that we don't just meet criteria for a disease or a disorder. It's more than that. On the right-hand side of this slide, we have a model of wellness that includes 8 dimensions. This is from SAMHSA. And the 8 dimensions are social, emotional, spiritual, intellectual, physical, environmental, financial, occupational, and social. If I didn't already say that already, I might have already said it. So as you can see, there are many different facets of wellness. Sometimes we might tend to focus on physical wellness or on mental or emotional wellness, but it's also really important, I think, to recognize that we're all multifaceted people and our wellness is multifaceted as well. And so on the next slide, I'm gonna give you guys a little bit of a metaphor. I hope that you have not experienced this yet in life, but unfortunately it's a very common thing. If you've ever had a flat tire, have you guys experienced that before? I can see some of you. Let's see if I can see more of you. Yeah, I see some heads nodding. So when you have a flat tire, what happens? Feel free to unmute and just call out an answer. What happens? I guess I'll be more specific with this. What do you notice about your ride when you have a flat tire? It's all bumpy, it's shaky. Yeah, it's not smooth. It's not a pleasurable ride, right? What about, what do you notice about your state of mind when you have a flat tire?
Michael said he's panicked when he
True.
has a flat tire.
Yeah, right? Yeah, like it kind of, when we get to that point where we get a flat tire, everything else kind of goes out the window, right? And we're worried about our flat tire and pulling over, right?
Right.
Another thing to note about the flat tire experience is that we can go for a period of time riding on a flat tire. Probably not very good for the car or for the axle, right? We might actually, the longer that we try to go without pausing and fixing that tire, maybe the more damage compounds for our car. But you can go a little ways, but eventually you're going to have to stop. And my metaphor is not that complex, so you can probably see where I'm going with this. If we think of our wellness and those 8 dimensions as kind of a wheel that keeps us going in life, if we start to neglect one of those areas and we get a little bit out of balance with our wheel, if it flattens on one side, it can really have an effect on our whole being. It can do more damage the more that we go on without addressing that neglected area. It also can put you in a pretty panic state, a pretty stressed state. And it certainly won't make the ride very smooth or pleasurable. It's going to be rocky and bumpy. And so I would encourage you to attend to your wellness. If this is not something that you're thinking about already, maybe intentionally set aside some time to think about all of these dimensions of wellness. I'm sure that this is being recorded, so you can see those dimensions of wellness on the recording. You can also Google 8 dimensions of wellness, and that will come up for you. And I have some tips about that I'll share a little bit later about maybe some different things to think about with your wellness as you prepare for a medical career. There are definitely some things that you can do right now to safeguard and to prevent, the letter that Andrew was just talking about, getting into that position where someone is so burnt out and hurting so much that they might even consider taking their own life. We know that medical student wellness is really important because medical students in particular are very vulnerable to difficulties with mental health, including depression, anxiety, burnout, and unfortunately, death by suicide. I'll also throw in there substance use is also something that medical professionals tend to experience in higher rates than the general population. We don't exactly know why medical students and medical professionals are particularly vulnerable, although we are studying that more and more. But we have some pretty good theories. You all are probably very aware that the medical profession is a high stress environment. Even if you're working in a primary care clinic, it can be very stressful, and there are many demands that are placed on you, and certainly many times when people's lives are in your hands. And so that can be very rewarding, and it can also come with a fair amount of stress. In medical school in particular, and I'll speak to PA school as well if you have some folks that are wanting to be PAs. PA school is also pretty darn rigorous. Some contributing factors to those vulnerabilities for students are theorized to be the workload. It's a lot. The pace is very quick. Even if you went through a very rigorous undergraduate program or post-bac program, when you get to that level of medical training, you're at the top of academic rigor. Also, people tend to have something called imposter syndrome, especially when they start medical school, where they really wonder if they really can do this, because it's very difficult. And so we see that as a function of the difficulty of the work. Many people have not struggled academically until they get to medical school, and their brain kind of misinterprets that information, not as, oh wow, this is harder than anything I've ever done before. It starts to misinterpret and say, oh, I'm struggling with this. That means maybe I can't do it. So we do a lot to combat imposter syndrome. Also, unfortunately, when you are in medical school, there is a fair amount of lack of control, because your schedule is set for you, your exams are set for you, and that is a major focus of your life. It's definitely a different phase of life for many people. Their time is not as available to them as it would be even when they get to rotations or to residency. So because medical students and medical professionals are vulnerable, one thing that I would recommend to you all is to start now thinking about your wellness, and especially establishing a wide variety of healthy habits now. And I say a wide variety because, gosh, one thing that we've all, I think, come to realize during the pandemic is the importance of having a varied toolbox for what life may throw at us, because sometimes the things that used to fill up our cup are not as available to us. I'll give you an example. I love going to the movies, and I haven't been to the movies in many, many, many months. I had to figure something else out to do for fun. And so I encourage you to establish a lot of different ways of putting healthy habits into your life. That would include healthy body movement, whether you want to call that formal exercise or not, or if you want to, have dance parties with your roommates for 30 minutes, 5 times a week. Whatever kind of helps you to move your body and get some of that good cardiovascular exercise in. Also attend to your nutrition and your eating habits. If you have not learned to maybe cook some basic meals for yourself, now is the time to maybe look into that. I love, I emphasize sleep here. If you get good at making sure that you reserve between 7 and 9 hours of good quality sleep every single night, that's going to help your brain to function at its optimal level, and it's really going to support your mental health. Often, like as a mental health therapist, it's one of the first questions that I ask people is, how are you sleeping? And if they're not sleeping well, it's often the first thing that I help them with. Just because if we can get sleep under control, many other things will fall into place. And the opposite is true too. Once sleep starts going, we become more vulnerable to other mental health conditions. Actually, hygiene is supposed to go with sleep hygiene. I would also encourage you guys to practice study and time management strategies now, even if you are the king and queen of the all-nighter. Try to learn as much as you can about yourself and your own study style. Are you more visual? Are you more kinesthetic? Are you more auditory? I know that's kind of old language for learning styles, but figure out how you learn and retain information the best, because you're really going to have to hone in on the strategies that work for you once you are in professional school. Also, time management. Start keeping a schedule. A to-do list is not going to cut it in medical school. You're going to have a to-do list and then schedule those tasks on to your day, because there will be many things that are competing for your attention. So go ahead and start practicing those strategies. This is a simple one, but it's something that we neglect sometimes. Make sure that you stay hydrated, that you're drinking enough water. Make sure that you're keeping up with relationships, and maybe even go ahead and plant the seed in your relationships, whether romantic, friendships, family relationships. Go ahead and plant the seed that, gosh, when I go to PA school or to medical school, you know, I'm really going to need your support, and things are going to look maybe a little bit different for a time in our relationship. You know, how can we keep up with each other through that time? Just because you're not going to have as much free time as you used to. Not, that's the wrong way to put it. During medical school, you won't have as much free time as you're used to having, probably. The next one might be a little bit vague, meaning making. So I use this term just as a broad term for your spiritual wellness, whether making meaning includes, you know, participating in formal religious practices, informal religious practices, you know, communing with nature, volunteering to help others, anything that you can do to connect with something larger than yourself, whether you are spiritual or religious or not. And maybe creating some, for lack of a better term, rituals around that meaning making. So, you know, whether it is journaling, even if it's just a sentence a day about something that you're grateful for, or maybe something that helps you to connect with something larger outside of yourself. Or if that's prayer or meditation, or making sure that you go outside and have the sunshine on your face for 15 minutes a day. Do what you can to make meaning in your life. And next is cultivating interests and strengths outside of academics. I know that can be a difficult thing to do when you're trying to get the very best GPA, the very best scores on your exams as possible. But it's really important for you all to recognize that you are humans too, and to be well-rounded human beings. This ultimately will really help you in your profession and in your career. No one wants to go see a physician or a PA who is just a medical robot and has no empathy and no interests. People want to go see helpers who are humans too, and who can empathize with being human. And so cultivate your interests outside of academics, and also cultivate your strengths. And finally, know when you need to reach out for help, whether that's to a professional, or maybe to a mentor, or to a physician, or a nurse practitioner or PA. Reach out for help when needed. And I do want to give you a little bit of information, a little bit of myth-busting information about mental health care, being a medical professional, and being a medical student. So one of the myths that I hear a lot is that if you're a medical student and you go to see a therapist, that somehow you won't become a medical professional for seeking that mental health care. Is that something that you guys have heard before, or to like be careful about it? I'm glad you guys haven't heard that. Great. I want you to know that it's your right to ask questions about confidentiality before you go to see anyone. And until you feel good about seeing that person and their ability to protect your confidentiality, you know, find someone else to talk to if you don't feel good about their ability to keep your confidentiality. Me, as a licensed professional counselor in the state of Colorado, I'm bound by about 1,600 things to keep people's confidentiality, in addition to my own morals. And so, like, it's against our state law for me to break confidentiality, except for, you know, a few exceptions, like if I have to ensure someone's immediate safety. And so I would not hesitate to reach out for help if you do need it and if you are struggling. And lastly, I didn't make a slide about this, but I did want to talk to you guys a little bit about what we do at Rocky Vista to support students' wellness. So obviously they employ me as a licensed professional counselor. I'm able to give our students both developmental and clinical services. So that means I can, speak to people about if they went through a breakup or if they're having trouble adjusting to school, or perhaps someone that they love has passed away. And I can also help people with depression or anxiety or other mental health conditions. Most colleges of medicine are going to have some kind of counselor on staff or therapist on staff that you can go and see. We also have a very passionate student body about wellness at Rocky Vista. And our students are constantly putting on programs to support holistic wellness for our students. We just got done with, usually it's an in-person health fair, but this year it was a virtual health fair where we got people involved from the community, all different topics related to health were covered at the student health fair. We also have a designated wellness committee and wellness representatives within our student government association who are very active in advocating for student wellness to our administration, and also who are very active in putting on events for students. Thankfully, we were actually able to have one of our first in-person events a few weeks ago. We have since ceased in-person events since COVID has been rising. But about a month ago, we had a yoga on our lawn, which was really well attended. We have several students and several faculty members who are certified yoga instructors. So yoga is a pretty big part of our culture at Rocky Vista. By no means do you have to be a yoga practitioner to go to school there. But if you like that, we have a lot of events like that. We also do de-stress events during high stress times of the semester. And we have a peer support office. So these are second year medical students that first year medical students can pop in. They have virtual office hours. You can pop into the second year's office hours, ask them for their advice or just vent. I think that's a new program that we're offering at Rocky Vista, but it's a really great one to support our students in their emotional well-being. Additionally, we do have a clinic too, so students can go to our clinic for physical health needs. So it's very convenient. If you have a cold or feel a cold coming on, that you can go and get care in the clinic, in between your classes or in between your labs. I know I haven't covered every single thing that we do at Rocky Vista, but I think that's probably a good smattering of what we do. So at this point, I'd love to open it up if you all have any questions for me about Rocky Vista or about, medical school in general and mental health.
Yep, guys, if you have any questions, just unmute yourself. Karin's going to leave after this part of the presentation, so any questions right now, feel free.
Karin, I am a parent of a little boy right now, and I'm anticipating that when I enroll in medical school, he'll likely be still quite young. Do you have any, do you meet with any students who are parents themselves? And how do they cope with medical school and parenting at the same time?
Roman, thanks so much for that question. That's a really great one. We definitely do have parents who are also students at Rocky Vista University, and I do have some clients who have little kids. I think if you talk to, I'm a big fan of like, talking to the people who have that lived experience, right? To really see how it is. And I think if you talked to some students who have had small children while being in medical school, that they will tell you that their experience is a little bit different than some of their peers that don't have small children going through medical school. In that, you have another role that you're fulfilling in your life. So, if you think about in medical school, you're juggling a lot of different balls. You have one ball that other people don't have to juggle. And so it is tough. But I think if you talk to them, that if you talk to those students who have young children, that they would tell you that it's definitely doable. And I don't know if you have a partner or a spouse, but one thing that I would recommend, if you do have a partner or a spouse that you're either with or not with, that you go ahead and start talking to them about, how is this going to look when I transition into medical school? How are we going to, how am I going to spend time with the children? What are we going to do about childcare? If you live with the person, are they okay with maybe taking on a little bit extra of the household duties while you are in medical school? Or is there something that can kind of be rearranged so that they feel like things are equal? But yeah, I definitely do see those clients. Thankfully, we're also able to see couples where I work. So sometimes people haven't had those conversations before they come to medical school. So I'm able to help facilitate those conversations so that people can maintain their relationships and the health of their relationships through school. Did that answer your question, Roman?
Yes, it answered it very well.
Great.
I'm afraid that the price of my ambitions will be my family, and I don't want that to be.
Yeah, I hear that. And I think, things will look different. Things will probably look different. And I assume you're in school now, right? So there are probably some similarities with what will have to happen, just maybe intensified a little bit. So being very intentional about your time will be critical. Thanks again for your question. Who else has a question? Oh, I see a question through the chat. How do you recommend balancing school and social life throughout our medical journey? That's a great question, Matt. Thank you so much for that question. So I think this is going to look different for every person. When I speak with medical students, many of them say it's really important to maintain your friendship circles outside of medical school, and also critical to form new friendships of your peers. Because sometimes you really want to talk to somebody who knows what you're going through, and that's going to be your peers. And sometimes you want to talk about anything other than medical school. And so that's where those outside friends are really going to be helpful to you. And so I don't mean to sound like a broken record, but just knowing that that phase of your life is going to look a little bit different. And especially when you're maintaining those friends outside of medical school, your social life will probably look very different than theirs does. Just because you're going to have less free time than they do. However, I know this has been changed a little bit by the pandemic, but before the pandemic, and the pandemic will end, by the way, I don't know when, don't ask me when, but it will end at some point. If we were talking about life before the pandemic, we have a lot of students who travel all over the world during breaks. It's really amazing to see their pictures when they come back. We have a global medicine track as well, so people will go on rotation to other countries. But really being intentional and being a planner and being organized, you can have a lot of fun while you're in medical school. You just have to plan for it, and make sure that you're utilizing your breaks in the wisest way possible. Hopefully I answered your question, Matt. Any other questions?
Okay, yeah, it doesn't look like it, but thank you, Karen. That was great. We really appreciate your input. All was great advice. So we appreciate your professional opinion on the matter. And this is being recorded, so we'll all be able to look through this in the coming weeks as we prepare for finals. So much appreciated and needed. So thank you.
Yeah, great. Well, thanks again for inviting me. And Andrew, I do have some contact information for you for an admissions representative if you guys would like to host them. No pressure in the future. So I'll get that to you. So I wish everybody a great night, okay? Take care of yourself. Don't be too glued to the news, okay?
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much. Okay, so we're going to be moving into the second portion of our meeting, which is just going to be our own advice from our own experiences as club officials. It's great that we were able to ask Karen some questions. We ran a little bit over now because of that, and so if you guys could just keep your input to maybe 2 minutes, 2.5 minutes, that'd be great. Just be conscious of time so we can all get our input in, and then still have a good amount of time for people to ask questions as they come up. So we'll start with you, Roman.
Yeah, I find that the most important aspect of maintaining a healthy mind and body is, for the most part, not always focusing on my studies. In fact, the majority of my relief comes from those moments, well, more like hours, where I'm able to put down my books and open up another book, sit in my armchair and really drown myself in either a textbook I'm reading right now just for giggles, or on various, pieces of fiction. But I'm alone. I've always been alone. So the key to my venting that many of you will reference to is journaling. And this is especially important to me because it records moments where I felt afraid, and I proved that, hey, my worries were unfounded. Look how I got through this moment, and if I can get through this, I can get through the next hard moment. But also, when times get hard, I have these really happy memories that push me forward. It helps me provide meaning to each of my actions, provides meaning to my day, provides meaning to my life, and it helps me really verify my purpose of becoming a physician. As my mom always said, your fate will follow what you swallow. And that applies in a twofold way. One, don't eat junk food. You're going to feel like crap. And honestly, yeah, it fills you up with empty calories. You get poor nutrition. It clogs up your brain. As Kieran asked us, learn to cook, or at the very least, cook something from scratch every once in a while. It'll make you feel good. It'll make you feel full. It'll make you feel fulfilled because you're able to be self-reliant and you're an adult now and you know how to provide for yourself. You know how to cook your dinners. You're not having to pull it out of a can. And as Andrew will later say in a very different way, you need to understand yourself. You need to recognize where you're failing and where you're succeeding, and be honest what you want, what you need, and what can wait. Every night I try and go for a walk, whether that's just to go out and look at the stars and wander around the park, or if it's just standing in my front yard and taking a couple deep breaths. But it's important to get outside, get away from everything, cool down, detach yourself from all the hectic studying, the pressures we're bearing down on you, and just focus on the present moment. Let the cool air soak into your skin. I mean, you're allowed to have fun. So I urge you to set aside time to do something you genuinely enjoy. Over the winter, I'm going to definitely set aside time to ski. During the school year, I set aside time to play with my baby or to read. but you're in college, you're allowed to have fun. God forbid you have a good time while you're here. Anyways, passing this on.
Thank you, Roman. Yeah, that was great. I really liked Karen's flat tire metaphor. So like really briefly, I had an experience for one summer where I was like really mentally fatigued and physically fatigued. Like I had mental fatigue. I recently I had broken off a toxic partnership or friendship with another photographer for a business. I was in a summer statistics course and I was doing summer research at OHSU, which was like 10-week long, 40 hours a week, plus time outside the lab that I put in. It was like a nuanced experience where she talked about imposter syndrome. I really felt that during that experience or that internship because there's like students from universities such as like Bernard, University of Notre Dame, Pomona, Scripps, Cornell, and Whitman, and I was like, Carroll, represent. So, but I was like feeling like, shoot, am I confident in my own abilities in the sciences? And then also like mental fatigue and like I was shooting photos for clients and actually lost my camera that summer, which took a hit to like my business. Physical fatigue, I climbed like 4 mountains and got injured on each one that summer. And then back to like the research, I clocked in hours from like 8 a.m. in the lab till 3 in the morning and repeated that for 2 weeks until a big research symposium. But like I burned out and I'll admit that like it's a real thing, imposter syndrome and burnout, and it's really important to be cautious of those things because whereas like I've had those like all that in one summer, there's these trigger points that you got to really catch, and as Karen said, you got to really develop good habits early on. So when you do move into your medical path, you're able to catch yourself with those triggers. After some of those life experiences, I really shifted to focus on my own health. And like, especially this semester, I've been like tracking my sleep statistics with like a wristband that tracks my strain score and such. I try to emphasize hour activity each day. I still continue some of my photography. I climb. And as she was saying, like cooking or meal prepping, as Roman also said, like just having that, that consistent thing, but also being able to set that time aside for yourself is really important. And as I said or I have on the slides, like venting to close friends, friends outside your major, like that's, and just talking about your experiences, like they're there for you as we are here as officers for you guys too, to talk whenever. But I think it's really good to have that and find that early on. So yeah.
So just a few tips of things that are important to me. I make sure that I get enough sleep every single night, which is like 7 to 8 hours, and you guys should too. Last semester I did a pretty big research project on sleep and mental wellness at Carroll, and I'm sure no one's surprised by the results that Carroll lacks good sleep habits and there's not great mental wellness here. Some other things that I like are essential oils. I know, like hippie, whatever, but seriously, like some lavender essential oils are great for relaxing. You need to find your stress reliever. So for me, that's cooking. If I'm super stressed out, I'll like make a 5-course meal. It's really strange, but you just have to find what works for you. Like Roman said, getting outside, make sure you go outside every day. Like it's hard, especially if you're doing classes from Zoom. But even if it's just like going on a walk in the park, like if you're on campus, you have Centennial Park super close to you. So just like go out into the fields and take a walk. I always suggest taking a break. There's a point where your brain just can't handle anymore and you need to be able to realize that, and it's okay to take breaks. Some other advice I have is that you need to learn what should and should not be stressed about. You absolutely cannot learn everything, and if you're trying to learn everything, you're going to overwhelm yourself. So you need to learn like at some point, like, you're okay with knowing 80% of the material by going into the exam, and that's fine. Also, if you walk out of an exam and you felt terrible about it, or you scored poorly on an exam, like, it's okay to sit there and think about it for a few minutes and reflect on it, but don't spend the next 2 weeks stressed about something that you cannot change. You can only change the future. Eating healthy is super important. I also suggest that everyone finds a therapist, even if you don't think you have mental health problems, which I'm sure people don't. But it's really nice having someone just to vent to that's not your friend, because sometimes you're angry and you say something that is kind of mean about someone else. And if you mention it to your friend, then that can just cause drama in your life. But a therapist, like, they can't cause that drama in your life. And then I also think it's a good idea to set limit on work hours. I, most of the time, am done doing any homework by like 10 p.m. and I won't allow myself to do anything after that. And usually it's even earlier than that, but just set like your work hours, and stick to it, and make sure you give yourself the time to watch Netflix or do whatever you want. So those are just my tips.
All right, so like everybody, sleep, sleep, sleep. Definitely try. I know I don't get 8 hours of sleep every night. I try and keep it between 6 and 8. Just because I feel like I function a little bit fine when I have like 6 hours of sleep. It's okay. Time for friends and family and yourself. If I spend 3 hours studying or something, I make sure that I've made time, like I'll set aside Saturday to just be by myself and just veg on like movies and video games and whatever I want to do, just to have it to myself. And my family, I talk to my mom all the time, even though she has no idea what the hell's going on with my school. She thinks I'm a biology major and whatever. But she's just still the best person to talk to. And like everybody says, I hope you guys find somebody to talk to like that. Find relief from your study. Yep, definitely. Everybody's talked on that enough. Recognize the ebb and flow of life. Sometimes it sucks and sometimes it's fantastic, and it can change every day. It changes like every hour. And once you recognize that, that's the best part of life right there. And then reward yourself. Out of everything that I've like used to cope with my anxiety and whatnot, rewarding myself is the best thing to do. Because even if I'm like, I get out of an exam and immediately after, to get my mind off of it, I'm like, what am I going to do to reward myself? I just did something very hard. Like, what can I do now? I can do whatever I want for a couple hours. Like even getting some ice cream or having a couple drinks with your buddies, And that's just, I don't know. Rewarding myself is the best thing I ever do. Because everybody talks about getting trophies for stuff that you do, but whether you like it or not, trophies make you feel nice. So that's all I got to say.
Yeah, thank you guys for sharing already what you said about just your wellness advice. And I think to just preface what I'm going to add on to this is that for all you members out there, you really need to personalize wellness, because to everybody, as you've seen through Karin's advice and also all 4 of ours and mine so far, you'll see it's all unique to our specific lifestyles. So you really need to take into account what your stressors are and what really will help you overcome them. And that's just going to come from experience over time in your life. To speak to my wellness advice, I'd like to preface it with a story that I'm going to shorten as much as possible. In September 2019, I was in a motor vehicle accident. It was just outside Missoula. It was a rollover crash. It was a pretty serious one. Luckily, I was wearing a seatbelt, and that pretty much saved my life. But I had just started working as an EMT at the time. And so as I was treated in the back of the ambulances by the EMTs, I was thinking like, oh my gosh, like what type of medical professional am I? Do I even belong in this? What type of medical professional could I be if I didn't practice what I preached? And so I didn't say I was an EMT, and I wanted to sink in my stretcher practically as I was like hauled through the emergency department. But there was no hiding from the officer that wanted my statement in my room. And as I was being hooked up to the monitors and getting a set of vitals done on me, I thought about what I was going to say in this instance. What was at fault for this accident? Whether it was the slippery roads, or I thought about how I wasn't familiar with the specific roads of this area. But it took him approaching me to finally realize what was at fault and who was to blame for this. And it was me, 100%. Because in the days leading up to this, for the past 48 hours before that incident, I had only slept 4 hours. I had done a 24, which turned into a 30-hour shift. And I had dozed off at the wheel. I've driven a little bit to the side of the road, overcorrected, rode over 4 times into the oncoming lane, barely missed hitting 2 other cars, and ended up having to self-extricate because my car was starting to light on fire. But it was me. And so for the next 2 nights under observation on the trauma unit, I thought, I sat alone with these thoughts. My family's 1,000 miles away and friends are 200 miles. And instead of letting them eat me away, I really put them into what interventions in my life I would take to make sure that this never happened again. And this came in the form of me the next day calling and putting away responsibilities that I had set for myself in the coming weeks that were going to stretch me too thin. In addition, it looked like reaching out to friends to hold me accountable for living a healthier lifestyle. It took working out more than just running miles every day, living a more holistic life, getting more sleep, prioritizing not studying for a bit, not studying for the MCAT, and having my friends hold myself accountable for it. And these are ways in which I was able to live a more well life. And it took, unfortunately, a really traumatic and a really large failure, a really traumatic experience and a really large failure for me to learn this. And I don't think that has to be the case for all of you. And so I'm going to leave you with these 4 tips. Number 1, own that you're human. Recognize that you're capable of and going to make mistakes and fail. And take ownership of your faults. And the truth will come from that. That's what happened with the car accident I was in. Recognize that if you fail, but then learn from it, it isn't really failure in and of itself. Number 2, move. Whether you take a walk or you run a marathon, movement brings fresh new blood throughout your body, perfuses your organs with fresh oxygen and nutrients. If you have time, join the running club. We run 2 to 4 miles every Tuesday or Thursday at 5:30 p.m. And we also have a run this Saturday at 2 p.m. Rain, shine, or snow. So let me know if you want more information about that. But regardless, movement is really great for your mental well-being. Take time for yourself. Scientists say that we have substantial improvements to our mental health if we spend time outside for at least 120 minutes a day. So I'm pretty confident that the cumulative time most of you spend on TikTok, Snapchat, or Instagram is at least 60 minutes, if not 2 hours. So try and spend that time outside. Feel the breeze, gaze at beautiful big sky country, and whatever you wish. And preliminary research also suggests that cold exposure helps depression and anxiety, so no excuses here. Lastly, have an outlet. So my girlfriend's a hardcore studier, and I tell her this all the time. She gets mad at me. Don't be a one-trick pony. You are more than just a studier, or a student, rather, that's more appropriate. You're more than just a student. Think back to your childhood. What did you love doing then? Did you love drawing? Did you love running, sewing, tree climbing? Don't climb a tree. I'm not telling you to do that, but we have a great climbing wall at the Hack. Go there, try out climbing, try something new. So either better yourself at something you already do or challenge yourself with something new. It'll build your confidence, and confidence will be an improvement to your wellness. Trust me on that. And I apologize for taking a long amount of time, but that's what I have to share. And so we're going to open it up to questions now. We are going to stay after for 10 minutes for any additional questions you guys have. So I think what will be appropriate for the people who would just want to leave after hearing the end messages is to skip to the end messages, and then we will stay here until 8:10. to answer any questions. So let's skip to the next slide and we'll come back to this. Okay, so our final meeting, we're going to have a pre-medical student from Carroll share his inspirational story. He actually just got into medical school. And we're going to tell you some final messages, what we're planning for over the winter break and also next semester. And a lot of that's going to involve your feedback. So try and be there for that. We'd greatly appreciate seeing you for our last time. And Michael, you can share our parting message.
Yeah, I think, yeah, that was great. And our parting message is effort only fully releases its reward after a person refuses to quit. So refuse to quit, and also take in mind your mental health and your wellness. And with that, thank you guys for attending, and we'll be here to answer any questions you may have about anything.
Yeah, we can move back up to questions. Just make sure you sanitize your laptops, guys. Okay.
As for any of you guys suffering from imposter syndrome, just know that if you're here, if you're calling yourself a pre-medical student, you obviously think that you have what it takes. I know that you have what it takes, and just keep trucking. You're going to get there eventually.
Thank you, guys.
No problem.